In this lesson, you're going to learn how to add integers using a number line. Our first example says, suppose that you received $10 from your grandmother for your birthday. You spent $4 on snacks. Using addition, how would you write a number sentence to represent this situation? Okay, and that's the key there. We want to make sure that we're using addition. And so if we think about this, the first thing that happened in this problem, we received $10 from our grandmother, so we're going to start with our 10. And then if it has to be addition, we're going to write a plus sign. And now we have to think about how we would show spending $4 on snacks. Well, if we spend money, that means that we're going to end up losing money. And so we're going to have to use a negative number to represent this. So with my 10, I'm going to add a -4 to represent that I have spent $4 on snacks. And now the question is, how would you model your equation on the number line so that we could show what our answer would be? And when we're modeling addition on a number line, we're always going to want to start right here at 0. Okay, and so this is going to be our starting point. And I'm going to put a little dot there to indicate that's where I'm starting. And the first thing I'm going to do is draw an arrow to the first number in my addition problem, which in this case is the number 10. So what I'm going to have to do, from 0, I'm going to have to draw an arrow 10 units to the right. And so I'm going to draw that arrow in. I'm going to put an arrowhead. And I can see that my arrow has stopped right here at $10. Now I have to show that I'm going to add a -4 from this spot right here. So right above this arrow, I'm going to put a little dot to indicate where I'm starting. And now if I'm going to add a negative number, I'm going to have to move to the left 4 units in this case. Well, if I move 4 units to the left of 10, I'm going to end up right here at +6. So we'll draw our arrow 4 units to the left, and we'll draw our arrowhead on there, and we can see right here that we've ended at 6. So the answer to this addition problem, 10 plus -4, the answer is going to be 6. In example 2, they're asking us to complete the steps to find the sum of -2 plus 3, and we're going to fill in some blanks to help us show that addition on this number line down here. And so in part A, it says to place the tail of an arrow on blank. And if you remember from the last example that we did, we're always going to start at 0. So we're going to start by placing the tail of our arrow on 0. And so here's 0 on my number line. I'm going to put a little dot there to indicate that that's where I'm starting. And now what I need to do is draw an arrow to the first number in my problem, which is, in this example, -2. So in part B, it says, draw the arrow 2 units to the left of 0 and stop at -2. That's where we're going to end up in this example. 2 units to the left of 0, put your arrowhead, and now we're at the number -2. The direction of the arrow is to the left, since you are counting down from 0. Now in part C, we're going to start our next arrow at the end of the first arrow that we drew, which in this case was at -2. So above this arrow, I'm going to put a little dot to indicate where I'm starting this time. And now I'm adding 3, which means I'm going to have to draw the second arrow 3 units to the right, since you are counting up from -2. And so if I count up, or to the right, 3 units from -2, I'm going to end up right here at +1. So part E, stop at 1. And this is how we show the addition. This right here shows that -2 plus 3, the answer, if I look at the end of my second arrow, is equal to +1. In letter F, it says to repeat the process from part A for the expression 3 plus -2. Okay, so it's very similar to the example that we just did. We just reversed the order of the numbers. And so we're going to start by placing our tail of our first arrow on 0. We always start at 0. And my first number in this addition problem is +3. So I'm going to count up 3 units, or to the right 3 units from 0. And I'm going to stop at +3. Okay, and now I have to show that I'm going to add -2 to the number 3. So above this arrow, I'm going to put the tail there, because now we're starting at 3. And if I add a -2, I'm going to have to move to the left 2 units. 2 units to the left is going to get me right here to +1. Okay, and so this picture now shows that the sum 3 plus negative 2 is equal to positive 1. Okay? Part G says, what can you say about the sum of negative 2 plus 3 and 3 plus negative 2? And if I bring the first picture down, I can compare these. All right. In each example, the answer was positive 1. With the first picture, we went 2 units to the left first and then 3 units to the right. In the second picture, we went 3 units to the right first and then went 2 units to the left. In either case, though, we ended up at the same spot as at 1. And so letter G says, does the order matter when adding numbers? And in this case, we can say, no, it doesn't matter. Order does not matter. Order does not matter when adding numbers. When adding numbers. And the reason is because addition is commutative. And that is a word that I hope that you have heard of before. The commutative property of addition says that you can reverse the order of the numbers and you're still going to get the same answer no matter what. In question 3, we're asked, how does the absolute value determine the arrow length for the number negative 2? And if we think back to what we discussed earlier with absolute value, all right, absolute value tells the number's distance from 0. And so if we think about the number negative 2, if we take the absolute value of negative 2 is 2 because it's 2 units away from 0. All right, since the absolute value of negative 2 is 2, that means that the arrow will be 2 units long. The arrow will be 2 units long, okay? And since our number is a negative 2 in this case, it's going to be 2 units to the left of 0. So what we would do, we would start here at 0, place the tail of your arrow there at 0, and we know the arrow has to be 2 units long, and it has to go to the left because it's a negative number. And there is the number negative 2. In questions 4 and 5, we're going to be modeling addition problems on the number line. And so in number 4, we're going to start by showing what 5 plus 3 would be on our number line. So again, we always start at 0, place the tail of your first arrow at 0, and we're going to move, in this case, to the right 5 units because that's the first number in our problem. Okay, and so there's our arrow showing the number 5. Now we're at 5, so our second arrow is going to start at 5. And from 5, we're going to be adding a positive 3, which means we're going to go 3 more units to the right. And so if I go 3 more units to the right, there's my arrow showing a positive 3. And 5 plus 3 gets me to an answer here of 8. So 5 plus 3 equals 8. In example number 5, we're going to show what the sum of negative 4 and negative 3 would be on our number line. So again, start at 0, place the tail of your first arrow at 0. Our first number in the problem is negative 4, so we're going to go 4 units to the left of 0. And we'll stop right there at negative 4. There's my arrow representing negative 4. Now above that, I'm going to start at negative 4, and I'm adding a negative 3. So I'm going to go 3 more units to the left. 3 units to the left of negative 4 will get me right here. There's my arrow representing negative 3. And I've stopped here at negative 7. So the answer to this problem, negative 4 plus negative 3, the answer is going to be negative 7. In question number 6, we have 2 more examples that we're going to model on the number line. And if you look closely at our 2 examples, you'll see that in each problem there is a positive number and a negative number that we are going to be adding. So we'll start with part A. All right, again, place the tail of your first arrow at 0, and our first arrow has to go to negative 6. That's the first number in our problem, so we're going to go to the left 6 units. Go ahead and draw that arrow. There's our arrow representing negative 6. And now from negative 6, so above that, I'm going to place the tail of my second arrow there, and I'm going to add 4 to this number, which means since I'm adding a positive number, I'm going to have to go to the right 4 units of negative 6. So I'm going to count 4 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Place my arrow. And again, this arrow represents the number 4, but the answer to our problem, we'll see right here, is negative 2. And so I can write down that negative 6 plus 4 is equal to a negative 2. Okay, and it makes sense that our answer is going to be negative in this case because the number negative 6 has a greater absolute value than the number 4. You can compare the arrow lengths. This number is going to have an arrow length of 6 units, and this number is going to have an arrow length of 4 units. Going 4 units back to the right from negative 6 doesn't quite get us back to 0, so our answer here should be a negative 2. In example B, we have 3 plus negative 8. So I'm going to start again at 0, place the tail of my first arrow at 0. My first number is 3, so I'm going to go to the right 3 units. And now my second arrow is going to start at 3. And from 3, I'm going to add a negative 8. So I'm going to have to go to the left 8 units starting at negative 3. And so I'm going to count to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. I'm going to put my arrowhead here. Again, this arrow represents the number negative 8, but the arrow stops at negative 5, and so that's going to be the answer to our problem. 3 plus negative 8 is going to equal negative 5. And again, it makes sense that our answer is negative in this case because the number negative 8 has the greater absolute value, meaning the arrow is going to be longer for negative 8 than the arrow for positive 3.